You walk past a stranger on the street. A specific smell drifts off them for half a second, a particular sunscreen, a certain laundry detergent, and without warning, you're 8 years old again. Not remembering being 8, actually, briefly, there. The heat of a specific summer. A kitchen you haven't stood in for 20 years. A person's voice you'd genuinely forgotten you could still hear. It didn't build up gradually. You didn't think your way into it. It just arrived, fully formed, faster than you could brace for it. And then it was gone again, leaving you standing on a sidewalk slightly disoriented, wondering what just happened. No other sense does this to you. A familiar song doesn't do it. An old photograph doesn't do it. Not like this. There's something about smell specifically that skips every line and walks straight into the room where your oldest memories are kept. This isn't a poetic exaggeration. It's a real, well-documented feature of how your brain is physically wired. And once you see the anatomy behind it, you'll understand exactly why nothing else you own, no song, no photo, no old letter, can do to you what a single unexpected smell can do in under a second. Last time, we talked about grief and how the relationships we lose never fully close. Today, we're looking at the strange biological shortcut that can bring someone, or somewhere, back for exactly 3 seconds, whether you're ready or not. To understand why smell works so differently, you have to look at wiring most people never think about. Every other sense you have, sight, sound, touch, taste, routes its signal through a structure called the thalamus first. Think of the thalamus as a switchboard operator. It receives the raw signal, organizes it, and forwards it on to the relevant parts of the brain for conscious processing. Smell is the one sense that skips this step entirely. Signals from your olfactory bulb connect almost directly to the amygdala, which processes emotion, and the hippocampus, which handles memory formation, before the information even reaches the parts of your brain responsible for consciously identifying what you're smelling. Neuroscientists sometimes describe this as smell having a private, express route into the emotional and memory centers of the brain, while every other sense has to wait in line. This is why a smell can hit you with a wave of feeling before you've even consciously registered what the smell is. Your amygdala is already reacting. Your conscious mind is still catching up, trying to figure out what just happened to it. Evolutionarily, this shortcut made a lot of sense. For most of human history, the ability to smell smoke, spoiled food, or a predator's scent and react before consciously identifying it could be the difference between reacting fast enough and reacting too late. Your ancestors who paused to consciously analyze a smell before responding to it were on average at a disadvantage compared to the ones whose bodies just reacted first and asked questions later. That ancient wiring never got an update for modern life, where the sudden emotional jolt is far more likely to come from a stranger's perfume than an actual threat. This phenomenon has a name in psychology, the Proust phenomenon, after the French novelist who famously described a memory flooding back at the taste of a small cake. But the researcher who spent her career actually proving it scientifically was a cognitive scientist named Rachel Herz. Rachel Herz ran a series of experiments comparing memories triggered by odor cues against memories triggered by other cues, a photo, a word, a sound, describing the exact same past events. Participants who were cued by smell consistently rated their memories as more emotionally intense and more vivid than participants cued by any other sense, even when recalling the identical experience. Interestingly, Herz's research also found that odor-triggered memories weren't necessarily more accurate, just more emotionally powerful. Smell doesn't give you a clearer memory. It gives you a more emotionally overwhelming one, because of exactly the neural shortcut we just described. Herz's work also found that these odor memory links are almost entirely learned, not innate.
The smell of a specific antiseptic doesn't universally mean hospital dread to every human being. It means that to you, specifically, because of when and how you personally first encountered it, tangled up with whatever emotion was present in that exact moment. This is also why the same smell can produce completely opposite reactions in two different people who grew up in the same house. One sibling might feel comforted by the smell of a particular pipe tobacco because it's tied to quiet evenings with a grandparent. Another sibling, who associates the same smell with a stressful period in the household, might feel their stomach tighten at the exact same scent. The smell itself is neutral. What it's wired to, emotionally, is entirely personal, laid down the first few times you encountered it, and rarely renegotiated after that.
This explains the strangest part of the experience, the sense that the memory arrived from nowhere, unprompted, unrelated to anything you were just thinking about. With sight or sound, you're usually somewhat prepared. You see an old photo because you were looking for one. You hear a song because you turned on the radio. There's a narrative leading up to the memory. Smell rarely offers you that warning. It arrives passively, on air you weren't paying attention to, triggering a direct hit to the amygdala before your conscious mind even had a chance to brace for what was coming. Follow-up studies on what researchers call involuntary autobiographical memory have found that odor-triggered memories are disproportionately drawn from childhood and early adolescence compared to memories triggered by other senses, which tend to skew toward more recent years. One proposed explanation is that early experiences with smells often happen during formative emotional periods, before the brain has built up competing, more recent associations for the same scent, leaving that first powerful pairing largely undisturbed for decades, waiting. That's why the memory a smell brings back is so often an old one, and so often disproportionately vivid compared to how far away in time it actually is. You're not just smelling a scent. You're reopening one of the very few files in your brain that's been sealed, mostly untouched, since the day it was first written. There's a slightly unsettling side to this too. Because these old scent memory pairs sit largely undisturbed for decades, the emotional charge attached to them doesn't fade the way ordinary memories do. A song you loved at 16 might feel pleasant but distant now, softened by hundreds of later listens. A smell tied to that same age, if you haven't encountered it since, can still hit with close to its original intensity, because nothing has come along in the meantime to dilute it. So what do you actually do with the sense that bypasses your conscious control entirely? Not much, honestly. And that's part of what makes it valuable rather than something to fix. Unlike most of the systems we've talked about on this channel, this isn't a bias quietly working against you. It's simply a door that exists, wired into you before you had any say in the matter, that occasionally swings open on its own. Some memory researchers and grief counselors now deliberately use this wiring on purpose, keeping a piece of clothing unwashed or a specific object, precisely because its scent can offer a brief, involuntary reconnection to a person or place that voluntary memory alone can't fully reach. It isn't something you can manufacture on demand for just any memory you'd like back. But when it does happen, on its own, on a sidewalk, for no reason you asked for, it's worth letting it finish playing out, rather than shaking it off. It's one of the only unfiltered messages your past ever sends you directly. You can't choose which doors your sense of smell decides to open, or when. But every time one does, for those 2 or 3 seconds, you're not remembering the past the way you remember a fact. You're standing back inside it, briefly, exactly as it actually felt, before the door quietly closes again and the sidewalk comes back. Next time, we're looking at something almost everyone feels but rarely says out loud. Why scrolling through other people's highlight reels can leave you feeling like you're the only one falling behind, and what your brain is actually comparing when it does that. If you're ready to debug your life and reclaim your mind, hit that subscribe button. We uncover a new hidden code in the things you use, the thoughts you have, and the world you think you know. Until then, keep questioning the code.